What is going on, my Daredevils? It is me, MT, and welcome back to this here heavy spoiler show, y'all. Matt Murdock is back, and this time, he's black with a new set of double D's on his chest. So, let's break down all the craziness that went down in episode 1 and try to speculate where all this craziness is going to bring us by the end of the season. So let's make like a man without fear and just jump into this dang thing. Episode 1 opens with the music of the James Hunter 6 as their song Whatever It Takes plays in the background of an episode of the BB Report, hosted by journalist BB Urich, played once again by Jania Walton. And as she interviews the people of New York City about the job Mayor Wilson Fisk is doing with his anti-vigilante task force, we can see a member of the task force giving high fives to kids while wearing the Punisher skull logo on her chest, reflecting the real-life trend of police officers adopting the Punisher's logo for themselves and tarnishing what it represented to Frank Castle as they seek to punish the brave souls of New York City who dare cross Wilson Fisk's path. And it's kind of wild that they're still so enthusiastic about using the Punisher logo after Frank Castle served them a 12-pack of whoop-ass at the very end of last season, leaving a trail of dead AVTF agents in his path. However, unlike last season, this Punisher logo appears to be part of the official seal of the anti-vigilante task force, placed right over their hearts, much like the logos of their comic book counterparts, comic book Kingpin's Thunderbolt units. Introduced in the very first issue of 2021's Devil Reign story arc, Mayor Fisk's Thunderbolt units wore a circled Thunderbolt logo over their hearts instead of a Punisher logo as they hunted down the various vigilantes of New York. Then, right after this, we get a shot of a Fisk propaganda poster on the street with the words New York Born Again, brought to you by Mayor Fisk on it. And of course, the words Born Again obviously allude to the Born Again subtitle of both this show and the original Daredevil Born Again storyline from the Marvel Comics. Then after this, the episode shifts from day to night, bringing us to the scene of Daredevil's infiltration of a cargo ship called the Northern Star. And in my opinion, this Northern Star name is very fitting for the start of the series, because if you remember at the end of season 1, Daredevil compares his sensory experience to being surrounded by 1,000 stars.
Do you remember I once asked you what it was like living in the darkness? Do you remember what you said?
It's not dark. It's like 1,000 suns.
So, starting the season with Daredevil using his enhanced senses to follow a cargo ship called the Northern Star fits that theme really well. Daredevil then descends onto the ship and starts whooping ass in stealth mode, in a sequence that feels inspired by both Batman's stealth assault scene from Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, as well as Captain Steve Rogers' assault on the Lumerian starship at the start of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. And after knocking out a few goons, Daredevil emerges into frame in a black suit while finally rocking the classic Daredevil double Ds on his costume, an element that die-hard fans of Daredevil in the comics have demanded ever since the character was first adapted by Netflix. This black suit is clearly inspired by Daredevil's Shadowland suit that first appeared in 2010's Shadowland #1 from writer Andy Diggle and penciler Billy Tan, and it looks pretty damn fire if you ask me. And immediately after getting rid of the resistance in his path, Daredevil uses his senses to find a shit ton of weapons that Fisk is trying to smuggle into the country from Europe. However, when he realizes that the captain of the ship has decided to sink the entire ship rather than risk discovery, Daredevil is forced to get the hell out of Dodge immediately. He starts to make his way out of there before his heightened senses point him in the direction of one of the wristwatches that one of the unconscious goons were wearing, leading us to getting yet another one of the series' iconic aspect ratio zooms, one that was achieved through the use of a system of cameras known as the three-headed monster.
It's essentially, it's a rig with 3 cameras on it. They call it the three-headed monster. And so you're basically getting roughly 180 degree of visual information. And that's where VFX does come in a little bit because they stitch the sides. And most of the movie shot anamorphic, but we shot this with spherical lenses so that when the aspect ratio changes, it can go as big as anyone's set they're ever going to watch.
And so then is where you feel like you are Matt Murdock, where you can hear the whole world. You can hear every sound in the whole world, you know?
Daredevil then grabs the ticking watch and shoves it into one of the containers right before the ship plunges into the East River. A smart trick in order to be able to use his senses to locate the submerged weapons later. Eventually, Daredevil makes it back to shore extremely out of breath, and I bet that swim must have been slightly daunting for him, since we do learn in comics like 2016's Daredevil #1 that Daredevil's radar senses are severely nerfed while in water, mostly because sound travels much too fast for him to process. Then after the intro, we are brought back to Josie's bar, where we ended the last season with Matt assembling a resistance force to take on Fisk and his army of violent men with micro-peeners. The inside of Josie's bar is still as trashed as it was after Daredevil's battle with Bullseye the night that Foggy Nelson was eliminated. And before Matt greets Deborah Ann Wall's Karen Page with a kiss, we see her training with a wooden dummy, forecasting a much more badass Karen Page in the future of this season as she gains more agency to be able to defend her own self should the need arise. And she's very wise to do so, because in the following scene, we see Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk order his people to hunt down Karen Page along with Matt Murdock as he looks over the half-sunken ship in the water. And returning in their roles from last season are Michael Gandolfini as Deputy Mayor Daniel Blake, who Fisk orders to frame the cargo ship sinking as a terrorist attack orchestrated by Daredevil. We also have Hamish Allen Hadley as Task Force member Powell, who was tasked to organize a salvage team to help Fisk get his weapons back. Artie Fruscian as the enforcer Buck Cashman, who is ordered to find and eliminate the ship's captain and first mate, and Sabrina Guevara as political advisor Sheila Rivera, a character that recently appeared in the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer, giving Spider-Man a key to the city. And I do wonder whether or not she's going to end up becoming mayor of the city by the end of this season, because it's usually the mayor that hands out keys to the city and whatnot. And of course, handing the key to the city to a rogue vigilante like Spider-Man would go directly against the mayor's anti-vigilante ideology, which causes me to suspect that Sheila will end up becoming the mayor of the city following the downfall of both Mayor Fisk and his anti-vigilante task force by the end of the season. Giving Spider-Man the key to the city could have been Homegirl's way of doing damage control after her association with such a senselessly violent administration. But anyways, after this, we are brought to a bar in Washington, D.C., not far from the United States Capitol building. And inside the bar is none other than Mr. Norval Shaggy Rogers himself, Matthew Lillard, playing the abrasive, laid-back, mysterious government agent known as Mr. Charles. The character Mr. Charles was introduced in the pages of AAFES issue number 15, a comic book series that Marvel Comics makes in collaboration with the Army and Air Force Exchange Service to highlight the efforts of the American military. In that alternate universe story, Mr. Charles plays an agent of the Roxxon Corporation who helps that company conduct illegal drilling operations in the ocean. But here we see that this Mr. Charles seems to be connected to Julia Louis-Dreyfus's Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, who we know is both the head of the United States Central Intelligence Agency while also being connected to the sketchy Ox organization, the same people responsible for nearly turning New York City into a dark hellscape by unleashing the fruits of their Project Sentry onto the world through the incredibly unstable Bob Reynolds. And while we don't exactly know what Val's motivations are for calling Mr. Charles and ordering him to assist Mayor Fisk, we do know that the Ox Group will at least have some presence in this season of the show, because when Marvel Studios released the first teaser trailer for this season, we can actually see a shipping container with the Ox Group logo on it as Jessica Jones bashes some security goon with a big-ass door. So whatever Mr. Charles is doing for Val in this season, it most likely is a mission that will benefit both Val and the Ox Group at the end of the day, but a little bit more on that later. But yeah, we then get another BB report set to the song Hula Gang by Joey Valence and Bray, a report that highlights Fisk's effort to clean up both the East River and the streets of New York. And watching the report at Josie's is Karen Page, who then expresses her frustration about Fisk's seemingly bulletproof political position. She then gets a lead on the names of the Cypriot captain and first mate that were on the boat, leading Matt to immediately go on a no-vision quest to find them. And as Matt goes to check that lead out, we transition to the office of Mayor Fisk, where we see him get a visit from both New York's Lieutenant Governor Juan Gomez, played by Lenny Platt, as well as State Attorney General Steve Rudd, played by actor Ty Jones. The two of them attempt to call out the mayor for his extreme anti-vigilante initiative that seeks life sentences for any and all New York vigilantes, which is absolutely nuts. Like, imagine spending the rest of your life in prison just because you hit a thug while wearing a unitard that you bought from Amazon.com. Insanity. The state attorney general then mentions how there are a series of vigilante trials coming up soon that the public is sure to scrutinize, giving plenty of work for Kirsten McDuffie and her team over at Murdock and McDuffie. However, just when these two men are about to enforce some major oversight on Fisk's operation, in comes Mr. Charles from Langley, Virginia, the home of Contessa Val's CIA headquarters. And Mr. Charles's arrival would be accompanied by a phone call from Contessa Val herself, who orders the state attorney general to assist Mayor Fisk with anything that he desires. Again, while it's unclear exactly what Contessa Val hopes to gain from her alliance with Wilson Fisk, I feel like it definitely has something to do with her overall goal of consolidating power for the United States. Ever since we first met her in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Val has been working on the low to gather as many resources as she can in order to make sure that the United States is always on top when it comes to the never-ending global arms race, an arms race that has been a staple of the MCU ever since Tony Stark was attacked for his Jericho missiles in the first Iron Man film. In the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, we saw her attempt to secure both the super soldier John Walker as well as Captain America's vibranium shield in order to use them for the government. Then, in Black Panther Wakanda Forever, we saw Val seek out Riri Williams' vibranium detecting machine and begin talking about plans to destabilize Wakanda in a quest to hoard all of the vibranium in the world for America. And of course, we learned in the Thunderbolts movie how Val and her AUX organization were experimenting on a number of unwitting test subjects for Project Sentry in order to recreate and surpass all the super soldier programs before that created enhanced beings like Captain Steve Rogers, the Incredible Hulk, Man-Thing from Werewolf by Night, as well as super soldiers like John Walker and the Flag Smashers. And this is all, of course, before she would be forced to recruit the Thunderbolts team to be the government-sanctioned New Avengers, a team of living weapons that she can use as the government's attack dogs against any other group of enhanced individuals that threaten the country. And this, of course, makes sense considering Valentina's childhood trauma that we learned about in the Thunderbolts movie, when she accidentally was exposed to one of Bob's fear-based void visions. Because after witnessing her father get gunned down by someone that he once considered to be a friend, Val has seemingly adopted this belief that the world is full of bad people and worse people, and that she needs to embrace doing bad things in order to keep America safe from people that she and her political elites deem as national security risks. This all being said, Val's desire to acquire these weapons will very much align with her desire to make sure that America always has the biggest stick in the world. She could very well be smuggling in these weapons in order for criminals to create more chaos in New York, just so Fisk's brutal anti-vigilante task force could act as a model that could be replicated on a federal and national level with organizations like Damage Control. Or she could be wanting to bring these weapons into the country in order to prepare for that Wakanda destabilization mission that the United States president wanted to execute during the events of Wakanda Forever. But this time using the New Avengers and Bob along with her government agents to get it done. A move that would of course not fly with Bucky Barnes, who loves Wakanda. And hell, maybe we might even see Val and the government use these weapons in order to perform a siege on the people of New Asgard as well, much like we saw during the Siege storyline from Marvel Comics in 2010. Who knows, only time will tell there. But yeah, not long after this, we are shown one of Karen Page's wanted posters that reads, "Wanted for aiding and abetting a vigilante. Karen Page, female, white, blonde hair, blue eyes, 5 feet 9 inches tall, last seen at the courtroom trial of New York City Mayor Wilson Fisk." The anti-vigilante task force is endeavoring to locate and apprehend the above-pictured individual, last seen wearing civilian clothing. So, with her face plastered all over New York, Karen is forced to walk around wearing a brunette wig when she goes to pick up information from her informants. We then catch up with Tony Dalton's Jack Duquesne after being put in a cage by Fisk's fascist regime at the end of Season 1 for his actions as the vigilante known as the Swordsman. Interviewing Swordsman is Mayor Fisk's Commissioner of Mental Health, Heather Glenn, played once again by Margarita Levieva. However, Heather's impartiality while conducting Jack's mental evaluation will go right out the window when she starts seeing the ghost of her former psychotic patient Muse in the reflection on the door behind him. And the cinematography in this show was cooking for real, because I love how the show has the camera tilt slightly every time Heather Glenn starts to internally relive her trauma from being attacked and tortured by Muse. It really makes it look like she is truly teetering on the edge, appearing as if she's leaning back so far in her chair that she is about to fall over into true madness. And back over at the offices of Missing Murdock and McDuffie, Nikki M. James's Kirsten asks Clark Johnson's Detective Cherry to attempt to find the people kidnapped by Fisk's task force, before asking him if he has any leads on Matt. Cherry continues lying to her, even though he knows damn well where to find Matt's blind behind. And I feel super bad for Kirsten being kept out of the loop here, because she straight up deserves to be part of Daredevil's anti-vigilante task force. Even though she's not a vigilante herself, she's still very much a hero in her own right, with Cherry even comparing her desire to assist clients affected by Fisk's policies to the biblical hero David fighting the giant Goliath. And that takes courage and strength, man, the kind that would lend itself well to Matt's secret underground resistance. Like, the day that Kirsten finds out that everybody has been keeping her out of the loop, that girl is gonna be pissed and might even stop being friends with Matt Murdock forever. And honestly, I wouldn't even blame her, especially after he left her the burden of running their law firm all by herself. I mean, look at her desk. It is absolutely covered in coffee cups and energy drinks, along with some painkillers and vitamins, showing that she's been working long hours around the clock just to make sure that the most vulnerable people in New York have representation. But anyways, when Cherry gets a 2:17 p.m. text from Matt during his conversation with Kirsten, we can see that he has Matt labeled as Easy Resi in his phone, as Matt appears to communicate meetups with Cherry by pretending to be a restaurant called the Red Kitchen, confirming a reservation. District Attorney Hochberg's corrupt ass then enters the office to try to get Kirsten to join the dark side over at the DA's office, but she just gives him the old fingeroony. And Detective Chairbear has a meeting of his own with Matt, who asks him to look into the missing captain and first mate of the Northern Star. But unfortunately, it would be much too late for boat captain Achilleo, as Powell and his team would bust into the Aegean Gardens Greek cuisine restaurant and apprehend Achilleo after punching the female restaurant owner, hiding him in the face, in front of all of her customers, showing just how emboldened the AVTF has become with zero oversight. That restaurant worker, Ariana, is played by actress Annie Parise, who actually played the wife of scientist Kurt Connors in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, before that production would cut all of her scenes for the movie entirely. Later on in the episode, we would see Achilleo brought to a secret AVTF holding facility where Powell sadistically tortures him for funsies. But what's kind of interesting about this moment is how Buck Cashman would intervene and call Powell out for his gleeful violence and admonish him for not exercising restraint in his interrogation technique. Buck would then proceed to take over and make false assurances to Achilleo that he would be able to return home to his family before sending a bullet flying through the back of his head. And the reason why I find that moment interesting is because Buck seems genuinely bummed out that he had to get rid of this boat worker who did his job perfectly, showing a more empathetic side of the character that we did not see in season 1. And it kind of makes me wonder if Buck is going to be down with the deal that Wilson and Vanessa make with Mr. Charles later on in the episode, when Mr. Charles tells Fisk that they'll be forced to execute everybody on the covert salvage team that manages to retrieve the sunken weapons. And if Buck is involved with overseeing that operation, I do wonder if we'll see him attempt to stop Fisk from doing so. That would definitely be a bit of a surprising move by Buck for sure. And after this, we are shown another BB Report Street interview that is suddenly interrupted with a transmission from a mysterious figure in a Fisk mask, a parody of the videos that infamous internet hacking group Anonymous would make while wearing the mask of the radical Guy Fawkes. While attempting to expose the BB Report for the propaganda that it is, we get a couple of music tracks in the background, including Sam Fontaine's Statue of Liberty, as well as the famous Bad Boy song from Inner Circle that acted as the theme song for the popular Cops TV show. And even though this mysterious individual straight up trashes BB Urich and seemingly makes fun of her dead uncle Ben Urich, part of me feels that the person in this Fisk mask is actually BB Urich herself. I mean, last season we did learn that she was only working with Fisk in order to try to bring him to justice for the murder of her uncle. and that she sometimes produces news content under different pseudonyms. So there is a chance that this particular persona was created by BB in order to let people know that the BB report has been heavily influenced by a Mayor Fisk attempting to hide all the illegal activity that he's been up to. The rap song Danger by Marco Polo and Torre plays during the transition to Daniel Blake's housewarming party. And ironically enough, this song was also featured in another comic book adaptation centered around costume vigilantes, the 2013 Kick-Ass 2 movie. Daniel Blake can be seen wearing a Knicks hoodie when he greets BB at his party. And after learning that Fisk helped him get his new place, BB tells him that it's unethical for Fisk to still have dealings with his old businesses and that he should be careful. But Daniel straight up ignores her like the dingus that he is. Later on, after BB hires cleaners to clean up after the party, we can see a poster for The Godfather over Daniel's fireplace, the only thing that he has decorated on his walls. He even put a little tiny spotlight on that poster too, showing how much he pictures himself as a character in his own Godfather movie starring Wilson Fisk. Then a little bit later, we catch up with Heather Glenn, who is writing up notes on her meeting with Swordsman when she gets a call from Hawkberg, who stands in front of a vending machine with an AVTF poster on it. The poster has a picture of an eagle spotting a vigilante with the text, "If you see something, say something," encouraging the public to snitch on unsanctioned heroes using their 24-hour hotline. The use of an eagle for this poster is fitting, considering that the logo for the AVTF that we see at the top of Karen Page's wanted poster earlier has an eagle placed on top of a shield. And while Hawkberg encourages Heather to fudge Swordsman's answers to make him look like an actual sociopath, a vision of Muse appears in front of her yet again, triggering her anger towards all masked vigilantes. And this would of course lead her to begin falsifying Swordsman's answers, implying that Swordsman answered true to the statement, "Evil spirits possess me at times." An ironic action considering how it is actually Heather that is actually the mentally ill one, having evil spirits from her past possessing her to be a more corrupt mental health commissioner. And I really love how even though Muse died in season 1, his influence is still very much affecting the people of New York. And that's pretty much what every artist hopes for after they die, for their art to move and change people. So I am sure that Muse would be ecstatic to see Heather so scarred by his attempt at art. Then we head back to Josie's bar, where Matt brings up his old mentor Stick while beating up a wooden dummy, before him and Karen reminisce about the good old days of Nelson, Murdock, and Page, wishing that they could be involved in defending the disenfranchised during the upcoming vigilante trials. But yeah, after this, back at the Greek restaurant, Ariana comes across first mate Christophe and agrees to give him shelter, before the episode ends with Detective Cherry having a heart attack after being beat up by some AVTF agents as the song Gee Whiz Look at His Eyes by Carla Thomas plays in the background. And during their interrogation, they ask him why he's looking into the sailors, before Daredevil rushes onto the scene and starts blindly kicking ass to try to save him. But despite Matt's best efforts, he would ultimately be held down and unmasked, forced to listen to Cherry's heartbeat fade away, just like he did with Foggy during the season 1 premiere. However, before Matt could suffer any consequences for his exposed identity, his nemesis Bullseye would come out of nowhere to save the day, before leaving a "You're welcome" note on his knife for Daredevil to read should he suddenly be healed of his blindness one day. And I genuinely wonder what could be motivating Bullseye to help out his nemesis Daredevil this season. I mean, why not just toss a knife through Matt Murdock's head after the task force removed his mask? Well, part of me is thinking that Bullseye wants Matt Murdock to stay alive just so he can be a pain in the ass for Wilson and Vanessa Fisk. But judging by comments made by Bullseye actor Wilson Bethel ahead of the season, Bullseye will be on a bit of a twisted journey of redemption this season. So saving Daredevil from the anti-vigilante task force may be his way for apologizing for everything he's done. Who knows? I personally would love to see a scenario where Daredevil and Bullseye are forced to team up with one another. Like, the closest that we ever got to something like that was when we got that dope three-way fight between Daredevil, Bullseye, and Kingpin at the end of Netflix Daredevil Season 3. But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of Episode 1 of Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I have not seen Episode 2 just yet because I try to write these breakdowns as blind as possible, no pun intended, but I am for sure excited to see more of what this intense story has to offer in future episodes. But yeah, you guys can follow me at Mastertainment at YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube by hitting that subscribe button and maybe even hitting that like button if you guys enjoy the video. But like always, I've been MT. You guys have been amazing, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.